All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cleaning Professionals podcast. I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
Patrick, we got a good topic today. We see this a lot in some of the forums. Guys are always asking questions about tile and grout, and that's one of your specialties, right?
Well, I'm not going to say it's one of my specialties, but I do a lot of tile and grout.
Yeah, I was going to say you do a lot of it.
Yeah, I do a lot of it, and I'm like, I'm pretty vocal about it, meaning I've seen, well, how do I put it? I'll put it like this. Tile and grout's a great service for our company. We do a lot of cleaning, a lot of sealing, of both, synthetic, or not synthetic, but, regular tile and grout, and then natural stone also. So it's a great asset for our company, but at the same time, I have come to learn a lot about tile and grout the hard way, just through struggles, through screwing up, and through when I first got started doing a lot of tile, quite a few years ago. I didn't really know that much about it. It was just like most guys, I think, get involved with it. It's just like another thing to clean. And then as I got going, I figured out, okay, there's a little more to this than just, than cleaning carpet, where, you just spray down a cleaner and hit it with whatever tool you're using. So tile and grout is something to me that I like to talk to a lot of cleaners about, because typically a lot of cleaners get involved with it, and they don't really know what they see it as a good add-on service, or as a good another means of revenue, but they don't really fully grasp what all they're getting involved in. So it is something I like to talk about, because I've had so many different experiences. I know, like in the Carolinas group, I've done a lot of live videos about it. So without getting serious, I'm already rambling, but without rambling too much, yeah, we're going to talk about tile and grout today. So first of all, why tile and grout, Seth? Why do you think carpet cleaners, right? Because I've never heard of a business called Able Tile and Grout Cleaning, or M&K Tile and Grout Cleaning. Why do carpet cleaners, do you feel like a lot of them advertise and want to do tile and grout?
So, why do they advertise? Why they want to do tile and grout?
Yeah. Why do so many carpet cleaners advertise and want to do tile and grout?
Well, almost everybody has tile and grout in their houses, especially a lot of the nicer homes. They have tile and grout, and you're kind of, if you don't get it, somebody else is going to get it, right?
So yeah, exactly. So it's a great add-on, and it's a great source of revenue, and especially with what we've seen in the past. Well, this has really been going on probably a couple of decades now, where we've seen a lot of transition going from carpet to hard surfaces of many different kinds, whether it's hardwoods or tile and grout or LVP, LVT. You're leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't offer it, pretty much, right? Yeah. Most houses have tile and grout in some form, some a lot more than others, depending on where you're at in the country. But it's pretty prevalent. You're going to see it in kitchens. You're going to see it in a lot of bathrooms. You're going to see it in showers. You're going to see it in commercial settings as well as residential settings. So it makes sense, right, for a lot of carpet cleaners to offer this service. Okay.
Let me ask you, somebody's getting into tile and grout. Their wand is all they need, right? For tools, that's it. Just take your wand and scrub it over the floor.
That's one way to do it. I've cleaned tile and grout that way. I really have.
Without the glide?
I've never cleaned tile and grout without a glide on my wand, but even with a glided wand, it can be risky. You could risk scratching it, and it's definitely not the preferred way to do it. You at least at minimum want a tile wand. Preferably spinner, depending on the the level of soiling on the grout. But yeah, you can clean it with a wand. Absolutely. I've done it, but like I say, the proper tools and the proper techniques are going to go a long ways for you. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of guys out there cleaning tile and grout with a wand. So, but getting back to kind of what I was saying, it's a great asset to be able to offer it for your company, because you can boost your revenues, boost your job averages. It's another surface that you can clean in the home. So it makes perfect sense for people, for cleaners, to want to be able to clean it. But some of the issues I see with cleaners and we'll dive right into this, is just not really having the proper education about what they're cleaning. Most of them, tile and grout cleaning, they look at it as being more simple than carpet, right? It's like this hard surface. You just spray this down, and whatever they're taught is whatever they do. Whatever somebody taught them, whoever they saw it on a Facebook group, or they had another cleaner teach them, or their boss taught them, or whatever. It's just, spray this alkaline cleaner down. Here's some Grout Master, and here's a turbo tool, and go at it, right? And then a lot of times that works out. A lot of times that it cleans up great, and you get great results, and you get happy clients. But tile and grout tends to be a lot more nuanced, and most of the time, people will end up stepping in it, so to speak, with tile and grout, because there's so many different things to learn and so many different things to look for. So let me ask you this question: like, what training and equipment do you feel like you need to be able to properly clean tile and grout?
Well, I mean, any type of IICRC class, Rob's got his classes out there. Just somebody's going to teach you some basic things. Then also, I think probably one of the most important things is to have a friend who's pretty well educated in it, somebody you can contact and stuff like that whenever you come across things that you may not know, rather than trying to go in it yourself and hope for the best, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's so true. Like, if you have somebody you can reach out to, and Facebook's made it great for a lot of people with all these groups, where if you have a question, you can ask somebody, you can ask a group of individuals, but you definitely, however you get your education, and education nowadays, it used to just be the IICRC, but there's so many different sources, right? So there's IICRC, you could take a tile and stone class from IICRC, or you could take it from, there's several people that offer some great classes around the country, or it might be getting your education online or through some of these learning through groups or learning through experience. So I'm not the type to say, hey, don't do this, don't clean tile and grout until you've taken this class. I'm not that type. But however you get your education, get a I guess a baseline of what you're looking at. And you want to be able to just learn some very basic things, like the type of equipment you'll need, being able to identify natural stones versus ceramic or a porcelain, being able to distinguish between a porcelain and a ceramic. That's huge. These are all things, what are the difference between porcelain and ceramic? What makes them different? I mean, most clients don't know, I'll be honest with you, that I see, but some of them want, they've got a porcelain, they want you to tell them, what's different, what distinguishes a porcelain from a tile and grout, or they have a travertine natural stone. Well, tell me about a travertine natural stone. How do you treat it differently? So you really want to get a good basic core knowledge of tile versus tile and grout versus, natural stones. Of course, they're grouted too. What about, you can go with this. And let me say up front that with this subject, we're not going to be able to cover everything. We've got a limited amount of time, and I like to split this into a couple parts. But what about slate? What about marble? There's all these different natural stones, and you'll run into them. And it reminds me a lot of like wool carpet. I have a lot of guys call me, and they stumble across wool carpet, clean it the wrong way, and you would think that the client would tell them like, "Hey, this is wool carpet." It's the same way. I talk to guys all the time that clean. They get caught out to clean tile and grout. Oh, come clean I need this grout clean, and they get out there and they don't realize they're cleaning marble, or they don't realize they're cleaning travertine. The client will not. You would think that somebody that invested that type of money would tell you and know out of the gate, hey, come clean my marble, but they don't always. So it's really good to have at least be educated enough to be able to tell the difference between, porcelain and ceramic, natural stone and, man-made tiles. So however you get your education, like I said, it's really good to be able to have that core basic knowledge. So with that, let's talk just a few basic things. The differences between porcelain and ceramic. I'm sure you've cleaned both, right?
Yeah.
All right. I clean a lot of both. But just this is very basic, some basic knowledge. But porcelain is baked at a lot higher temperature than ceramic. And it's baked longer, and it's made out of a specific type of clay. And this makes porcelains a lot more less absorbent, and a lot more durable. So typically you'll see porcelains in really high traffic areas. You'll see them in showers. They absorb very little, like next to no water, whereas a ceramic is much more absorbent. They're also a lot denser, and they're just a lot more durable all around. And one way you can really tell the difference between a porcelain and a ceramic, if you look, is typically a porcelain, the color will go all the way through that piece of tile. So like if you were to chip off a piece of porcelain versus chipping off a piece of ceramic, most of the time the porcelain is going to look the same after you've chipped it, and the ceramic, it'll be a different color underneath. So you might like chip off a big piece of ceramic and it be white underneath. Okay. So that's like one of the biggest things, one of the biggest distinguishing factors that you'll see is just how tough and how dense the actual tiles are. So that's just a few things that are, are good to know. And some other things that are really good to know is being able to distinguish between, say, a porcelain and ceramic, or travertine, or marble, or slate. So these are all really, really good things that you just want to take the time to learn. Okay.
All right, so let me ask you, if I don't mean to get you off track here, but say, what are you going to see mostly in like the common residential homes that typically most guys clean? Just your average to median income family. You're going to see porcelain and tile, or travertine, or what do you typically see with the houses?
Typically in most houses, depending on your market, right, and your demographic in the area, you're not going to see very many natural stones in middle to low end housing. So most of the time your natural stones, which are way more expensive, are going to be found in higher end houses. Now obviously, there's always exceptions, but for the most part, you're not going to see travertine in low to middle income housing. It's going to be something that you're going to find, and same thing with marble. Okay, you're going to find it in at least upper middle class to higher end, homes that you're going to clean in. Okay, so, and the same thing really kind of goes with porcelain. Not always, but typically porcelain is a lot more expensive tile. It's more expensive to make. The actual tile itself is more expensive to purchase, and then it's a lot more expensive to have installed because it's so much more difficult to cut. So you'll kind of, as you'll in lower end housing, you're more likely to see a ceramic. And higher end, you start seeing running into porcelains and then natural stones. Now, I've cleaned middle class houses before that I've cleaned travertine or whatever, but this is kind of as a rule. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Okay.
just curious, a lot of these guys that go into the houses, and, some of the guys who are just getting into tile and grout, they're probably thinking, okay, well, how am I supposed to, recognize these things? And I know you're about to cover, you've been covering a little bit, but, a lot of times when you go in those situations, that flies right out of your head and you completely forget what you've learned.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. You really want, and again, I keep going back to this, but you really want before you, and I know a lot of carpet cleaners just out of the gate, they start advertising tile and grout cleaning, right? I mean, most do. If you look, even new cleaners I know that have very limited experience, and this is something I harp on a lot, but a lot of cleaners that have very limited experience, even cleaning carpet, you start looking at these guys' trucks and you'll see this. You'll see carpet, tile and grout, upholstery. And the truth is they know very little about any of it. But before they've even learned what they need to know about carpet cleaning, they're on to adding different services. And I mean, to be fair, they add services for the revenues, because in some areas there's not that much carpet to clean in a lot of these houses. So they want to be able to add different things. So you see carpet, tile and grout, upholstery, LVT, wood floor. And the truth is, they're not even proficient at carpet cleaning yet. And then they start adding tile and grout. And it's fine in most situations until you get into a scenario where, you walk in and maybe it's a natural stone, or maybe it's just a ceramic with and just a normal kind of run-of-the-mill tile and grout situation, but it's got a topical sealer on it, or it has some kind of damage, or it's been regrouted. And so that kind of, I guess, we'll transition into the next thing is, just pre-inspecting, because one thing I've learned over the years, and again, I've learned this the hard way, Seth, because I when I first started doing tile and grout, I mean, I was born and raised in the carpet business, right? But when we first started getting tile and grout, I knew nothing, very little about it, and I learned through trial and error. I learned about topical sealers by going in and cleaning, not knowing that there was a topical sealer on there, and figuring out the hard way. I learned about, cleaning travertine, not knowing that I was cleaning travertine. So these are all things I learned the hard way. And you're better off if you'll take the time to at least take a class and educate yourself. If not, take a class, at least do some research online at the bare minimum, right? And learn some of the that are going to help you avoid some of the pitfalls, because when it comes to tile and grout, pre-inspection is everything. And most guys do not do that. They go in, whatever they charge per square foot. Hey, Miss Jones, yeah, we're here to clean tile and grout. This is how much it's going to be. They'll have a very, a process that's extremely, in a box, very limited knowledge. Okay, I'm going to take Grout Master. I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to take my spinner. We're going to do 1,000 PSI. And that's it. They just go in with blinders on. If it cleans up, it does. If it doesn't, there's a lot of reasons, right, why quote unquote will or will not clean up. And a lot of guys I see posts of grout that has all sorts of issues. I mean, I've seen posts on the Facebook groups where guys are looking at regrout, wondering why there's still dirty spots. They have no idea what they're looking at. They're looking at grout that's been replaced with a different color. I've seen color seal situations go bad where they've gone in and cleaned on top of color seal. Efflorescence is an issue. There's so many, maybe from the color was never uniform from the time it was installed. Maybe they got the grout mixture too wet. There is just so many different things with tile and grout. And I still, look, I'm not an expert, but again, the more I do tile and grout, I tell my guys all the time that work for me, there's nothing that will come back and bite you as hard as not doing a really thorough inspection on tile and grout.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've had that happen before too. I think I told you about that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't mean to ramble, but tell us a little bit about your experience. Like what's something that sticks out in your mind where you didn't do a good enough pre-inspection and it came back to bite
you? Yeah, well, I mean, it was this really nice home. Went into the lady's house and just a quick estimate, and just kind of walked around, just basically looked at one part of the house. She kind of briefly showed me some other areas in the house, and so I scheduled it to clean, and I don't remember the exact whole story. She may have been in a hurry why I didn't get to measure the house, and so I'll measure it when I come back to do the job. So when I came back to measure it and started looking at the grout, actually I take that back. As soon as I started cleaning it and started noticing, okay, well, this is this color here, and I've just cleaned it. Why is there a streak about this long of a completely different color? The grout is beige and this is gray. And so I started going through and noticing that was all through the kitchen, especially kind of random places throughout the rest of the house, but mainly the kitchen. And so I had to call her in there and show her. I was like, what's going on here? And she finally admitted later on that in the last 20 years, she had been regrouting it herself or paying, people who just helping hands in the house who had no experience in regrouting, paying them to do it. And obviously they did a very bad job.
Yeah. And that's really common. And it's common for them to have done it and know about it. And it's also very common for people to have moved into a home and have no clue. And this is like another one of the pitfalls is, they move into this house and they want to get, obviously the grout looks bad, so they want to get it clean, and they bring you in, the professional. And if you don't, and sometimes it's really hard because you might have a lot of regrout or grout repair that's been done, or, grout that's fractured or that's missing or pitted out or that's loose and ready to come out. And a lot of times that type of stuff is really, really hard to distinguish and see because it's just so dirty, right? And so especially with the color situation, like that's where it really, really pays to do a really good pre-inspection, and then also to do a really good pre-qualification. And this is something that I've learned to do is like, when I go in and I'm looking at a grout that's several years old, I don't ever make any promises about color uniformity or saying that you're going to get the color all to match. We always talk about we'll do the best we can, because sometimes you'll get in there and you don't realize what's going on until you start. It's so dirty until you start to pull off some of the layers of grime. Then you see like, oh, whoa, okay, we got 2 or 3 different colors of grout going on here, or we got grout that's in extremely poor condition and it's really pitted out. I call it pitted out, where it just starts to get really, it's open and porous and in poor condition. So there's so many different things to look for. And I've been in that situation before too. I mean, one of the and I'll just give you a quick story. This was, and I can give you several quick stories, but one of I'll just give you two. And this is early on in my grout cleaning career, I guess you could say. But one, I went in to do a handicap shower. A guy had a son, and he had a power chair, and his son was disabled, and he would go into the shower, and it was really large, specially built tiled shower for his son, and he would go in and drive this chair into the shower and take a shower. And he said the grout was starting to look bad. And I went in and I looked at it, and it was a lighter color looking grout. And it was dirty. And I said, sure, I'll clean it for you. And this wasn't even the walls, it was just the floors. And he said, well, it's just from where this chair rolls in and out, it gets nasty and all that. And I thought, well, that makes sense. So I started cleaning it with very little pre-inspection, and I start stripping off paint out of the grout lines. And this guy, I immediately called him in there and I asked him, and again, I did very little pre-inspection, asked very little questions. And he told me, yeah, the grout started looking bad. So I painted it. So I went in and went to town, real high alkaline cleaner, grout brush, scrubbing like crazy. And next thing I know, I'm flaking paint off of this grout. And it does not come off uniform.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. So he had went to Lowe's or whatever and got like a color grout pen. The grout never was a really light color. It was like a gray color. And he was making it essentially almost white. It was an off-white color, but I learned the hard way on that one. Another one that sticks out in my mind is, I go in, start doing a bunch of bathrooms in a house and realize that there's a topical, like a wax all over it. Like to have never got it all off. So those are all things that I would much rather somebody have told me prior, or me be able to learn prior, than to figure out myself the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you feel like are some of the tools that you might need to properly clean tile and grout?
Well, I prefer using a spinner just because I think does the best job that I've noticed anyway. And that's probably about the only thing that I use. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, getting back to what you said earlier, you can do. I've cleaned tile and grout with a wand. I've cleaned tile and grout with a glided wand. I'll be honest with you, but I prefer a spinner too. On lightly soiled tile and grout, a wand is fine. The thing about using a glided wand or a metal wand, you have to be really careful, because you can pick up a small piece of debris, even if you pre-mop the floor or pre-dry mop the floors, which most guys do not. It's easy to miss a pebble or a little piece of debris, and next thing you know, you're dragging your wand all around. And especially if it's a softer tile, God forbid it's a actual natural stone, is really, really easy to scratch, really soft. But ceramics you can scratch. Porcelain is a little harder, but that's the thing I don't really like about it. And also, when you get into really heavily soiled tile and grout, where you're trying to bring it back to life, say it's a floor that's never been cleaned in 10 or 12 years, you really need a spinner to do a really thorough job. Some great tile wands out there. It's a bunch of different manufacturers. And when I mean tile wands, I don't mean a carpet wand. I mean an actual tile wand. And in certain situations, I prefer a tile wand too, like tight areas, or like I said, lightly soiled tile and grout. And now we're starting to see Mike Peyote's coming out with the brush glide with green glides. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just slap that thing onto the end of your wand. So that's a neat, kind of variation, which is something that we've not really seen before. We've either always had a carpet wand or we've had a tile wand, and this kind of merges the two. So that's cool. And you can do a good job with the tile wand, but when you get into really, really bad, you want to want that spinner, that high PSI. If you ever look under there, it's like there's actually turn your tool up, regardless of whatever kind of tool you're running. I run a turbo hybrid. I've ran different types of tools over the years, but I prefer the turbo hybrid for a couple different reasons. But if you flip that thing up, man, it's like a hurricane going on in there with the high PSI, that spinning action. You can really get a great aggressive cleaning. What are some of the agents that you feel like that you use? When you think tile and grout, you tend to think high alkalinity, right?
Yeah, high pH.
Yeah, right. High pH.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the case, and a lot, and there's most of your tile and grout, at least what's made for stuff that's not man-made, tends to be on the higher side. Anywhere from really going from 9 all the way up to there's stuff that goes to 14, right? Um, but there's a lot of different products out there. Everybody knows Grout Master. That's a really popular one. Sager has a great one with Tsunami. I've used it. It's a really good one. It's really high up there on the pH scale. So there's a lot of really great high pH tile cleaners out there. Then when you get into natural stone, you got to be careful what you're using. You got to be a little more careful. And then also, there's a lot on the acid side. There's some grout restorers, that'll take care of issues that a high pH product wouldn't. Where if you're trying to correct something like hard water issues or efflorescence or whatever, you might want something on the acid side. But then again, you got to be careful not to use something on the acid side on a natural stone. So there's just a lot. My point is, and I know I'm kind of rambling and all over the place, but there's a lot of problems that can arise, and there's a lot you need to know. And I've seen what happens both personally and from other cleaners when you go in and you don't take the time to know what you're looking at, and you rush in. I always tell my guys that work for me, I tell them, fools rush in on tile and grout, because we clean a lot of it. And man, I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 tile and grout jobs I do, whether it be a man-made, tile or a natural stone, there 9 out of 10, there's something going on. Like it's that. I think it's a combination of poor installation. It's like everything else. The true craftsmen and the days of people really taking pride in their work are going away. And so the majority of what I see, especially in new construction, there tends to be a lot of issues. But I always tell them, yeah, fools rush in. There's almost always something that you can find that you need to look for, that you can point out to that client beforehand. And because that's what it's all about, is pointing it out beforehand. That way it's not an excuse. It's a pre-qualification at that point.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: what problems give me some problems that you know of that can arise whenever you're cleaning these hard surfaces in people's homes?
Well, I think you kind of already mentioned probably the biggest one, and that is people trying to fix problems themselves, putting paint over them, or trying to do homemade repairs with the grout. And if you go in there with like a 1200 psi pressure, which a lot of guys do, and there's nothing wrong with it, but you got to, like you said, pre-qualify to make sure there's no loose grout, because then if you go in there and you start blasting all their grout, it's not going to be their problem, it's going to be your problem.
Exactly. I mean, that's a great one. And there's jobs I've went in on where I've saw loose grout where we still cleaned it. We cleaned it effectively, and we didn't fix the loose grout, but we didn't make it any worse.
Yeah.
It might be a situation where maybe you don't want to use the spinner. Maybe you want to use the tile wand. Maybe you want to keep the PSI lower. Maybe you want to let your chemical do a little more of the work for you. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about, but there's a lot of different problems that can arise. There's a lot of ways you can avoid those problems, whether it be by just recognizing them or pre-qualifying it. I mean, there's situations where I've cleaned before where I've just told them straight up the deal. I mean, I did a slate job where this slate was like 50 years old. This was last week. I think I told you about it. And I mean, it's in terrible condition, but she just wanted to clean. She's not changing nothing. She's not doing anything. It's whole house full of slate. And, I pre-qualified it like crazy. It was a good job for us, but had you just went in there and cleaned it with some kind of unrealistic expectation or didn't know what you were dealing with, you could have really created a lot of problems. So, yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. I would really like, and something I didn't even get into, Seth, is we were having something going on that was first pointed out to me by Mike Peyote. He calls the porcelain tile phenomenon. And that is something that's going on specifically with porcelain right now that I've had happen to me now twice. And it's a coating problem on the newer porcelains. I think it's from like 2018. They're finding it up where they're having slip resistant coating and also protective coating that they're put on there that is really easy to come off, and it presents as a blotchy unevenness. So like when you go and you hit it with your Grout Master or what have you, next thing you know, you've left the floor all blotchy. And I've had it happen to me twice now.
Yeah, I
So
remember you sent pictures of one of the jobs, and it was pretty interesting to see.
yeah, and some of it can be corrected with an acid rinse and a bonnet or by buffing. Some of it's a little harder to correct, but there's a lot going on right now, especially more than ever with tile and grout. So I'd like to maybe do a part 2 to this. I'd love to have Mike come on, possibly if he'd be willing. I don't know if he would be. We got Sager on here. Maybe we get Mike on here because he's way more knowledgeable than I am about this stuff. So yeah, maybe in part 2, like I said, we've just really just quickly just glazed over. And when it comes to tile and grout, I could just talk all day, and not because I claim to know so much, because I don't, just because I've had so much happen. So maybe on part 2 we could have Mike come on and discuss it more in depth, because he's really big. He's really been tracking this porcelain deal. So that maybe that would be something that we could plan for a future episode.
Yeah, let's plan on it. And I forgot to mention too, we mentioned the IICRC and Rob's, but Mike actually has a hands-on training school, which is really beneficial. What's the name of that one?
He had it in Wilson, North Carolina, which I should have taken it, honestly, but we were so busy at the time, which is not that far from me, hour and a half or so. Yeah. But I forget what he actually calls it, but it's a really, really in depth. I mean, he goes super in depth, I think, into repair and, all sorts of stuff into, natural stone. And so it's pretty interesting. So maybe we could get him on here and have him talk to us about that, talk about a number of other things in this porcelain tile issue. So I'd love to have him on here, because that would be really cool.
Yeah, let's plan on it. We'll send him an invite here soon. Well, anything else?
I think that's it. I've rambled enough.
Well, like you said, I mean, there's so much more you could cover. It's an endless topic of information, I should say.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we will see you guys on the next one. I think we're going to have an interview next week. We're going to have Mr. David Blackwell, correct?
David Blackwell. He works at the local Ramsco here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and just to kind of get his perspective. He meets a lot of carpet cleaners and he gets to talk to them. He sees what they buy. He sees some issues that he's can talk about and kind of share with us and share with the audience.
All right. I look forward to it.
All right. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.